all of this bringing multiple tools together, products together, as you mentioned today. You're using Threat Protect, IOC, and all of that. And with VMDR, one of the things that we've really brought to it, and I want to hear how you think about that, is that the response element, right? So for a long time, it's been about, here's what we do, here's the data we have, here's, you go to the SOC. And but a lot of times when you actually start to look at, well, I need this critical patch to be done, that's a lot of different teams in different locations and the silos, and it can take a long time sometimes to get those things remediated. And so I want to kind of hear your thoughts on what you think about
Sure.
the aspect of response combined together with that detection and the asset inventory and the detection piece as well.
My role to manage the vulnerability space in all issues related to exploits prompted me to push for agents. So we install agents on not only the mobile devices, but also on all servers. And there's a strategic reason for that. Is my intention is not to replace the regular patch management processes for big organizations like I work in here in the United States. It's well oiled, it works well, but it has happened with my CISO. He's come to me and said, can we get this critical patch out faster? And one of the things that I'm always struggling with is working with the teams and getting them to do everything in the speed that they normally function in, which is great for a regular cadence of the monthly patching. That works great. But what I'm looking for is a tool which you offer now, which is to use the patch management module. For the large corporations, we want to use it and have it available. So if there's something critical that has to go out today, immediately, my team can launch and push that patch so that we're protected as quickly as possible. Now, for the smaller organizations, okay, the ones that I was telling you are more like a mom and pop shop, they are going to be using that more in a production environment, to where they're going to do their normal cadence through the monthly cycles and try to use the Qualys tool to do all the patching. One of the benefits you also have with your tool, we've tested it, is that it validates immediately right after, once the patch is pushed, that there's no longer an issue. Sometimes with the other processes, you have a delay, you have to reboot the machine, or you have to change something in the registry, and it's not always done. Sometimes it fails to push. There's many, many different factors. Your tool, not only does it do it, but it actually checks right after to make sure that it is accomplished. So to me, it's a quicker turnaround.
That's the thing that you always keep getting, right? People come and say, okay, I have deployed the patch. Is it patch shared? Is the vulnerability gone? In my wall of shame, am I going to look good now? And with that immediate responsibility, I think that really helps to kind of validate that. And that's sort of why we try to focus on doing all of those things on a single agent, so that we can really bring not just the deployment, but also the fact that it's remediated, do that quick check, and move forward with that, so that the teams can themselves see the impact of that patch management activity that they have done. Now, I think you mentioned about the existing solutions that are working well, and there's teams that are used to using that. And now with this whole work from home, I think that has brought up some very new and interesting challenges, because and not just for your organization, but we see that using SCCM and some of these tools to deploy patches over VPN for 7,000-8,000 employees is just not feasible. And I'm curious to see what you're seeing, and how do you see that what kind of technology or cloud-based technology would be something that would help in that situation, and if this is something that the Qualys agent's capability actually does help?
The Qualys agent does have that capability, obviously, for the people that work from home. The difficulty, again, is to work with the teams. It's not the technology that's the problem. It's always the process and the people. So one of the things that we have to start looking at is being more agile. That's common in industry today. Everybody wants to move to an agile process. What agile means for us at Toyota is to not always not always function in a traditional manner. If there is a need to function out of the box, we function out of the box. If we make a mistake, the idea is to recover quickly from that mistake. So that is why we push to have as many flexible tools as like the ones you offer in our tool set, in our quiver of tools.
Right. I think that brings up the larger question, which is, of course, you have been a great adopter of Qualys platform and the ability to have these multiple capabilities or tools on the same platform. So you mentioned indication of compromise, file integrity monitoring. There are different things that you use from Qualys. So of course, the consolidation of the agent and having a single platform is one thing. How do you see that by having this data already brought together in one place and correlated, what value does that offer you compared to maybe having multiple tools and using a SIM or something like that to push the data? How do you see that helping, and what additional things can we do to bring more value on top of the analytics that data that we already collect will provide you?
The common struggle, I believe, in every organization, and please, I haven't only stayed at Toyota Financial Services. I worked in many of the other financial services in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex here. The biggest problem we always have is having the corporate metadata, the corporate knowledge inside of the reporting. The difficulty is never been to say, well, these Windows machines have these issues. Right. Your tool set has always been spectacular at that. The problem is giving it to the right person to remediate, because out of the 100, 50 belong to one team to remediate, 25 belong to another, and the other last 25 belong to the last team. So knowing which ones they are, how to distribute them, the way we're doing it is with tags. So we give tags and we associate tags. Now, today, that's still a manual process. You offer a ServiceNow plugin so that you can assist populating ServiceNow, because lots of times they don't populate their tool efficiently because their scanners don't necessarily scan everything as you do, as Qualys does. Qualys is spectacular for what it can pick up. So we provide data to the CMDB. We want the bidirectional pull data back so that it can populate tags for us, so that the native reporting out of Qualys and the dashboards can be tailored for the right audience, so that they only see their assets and they know that they have to prioritize them. Anytime you start showing data from other people, other teams, unless it's just for GWIS knowledge, everybody's always very gun shy because they don't want to try to be involved in somebody else's mess.
Yeah, I think that's integration with other tools like CMDB's ServiceNow is, of course, important to really get that holistic picture of your security program, because there's knowledge, as you said, about the business, which is maybe in other systems, other tools, and that's something that is required to bring additional sources of data together. One of the more specific questions I had was around you have IOC and file integrity and vulnerability management on the same platform. Does that offer you advantages to see malware related information in the same platform as vulnerability and unauthorized file events and all of that, relative to, as I asked earlier, just having multiple different platforms, each just doing EDR or just vulnerability management or just file integrity, and then getting the context together. So that's one thing that we've really focused on, and I'm curious to see what's your view on that. Is that advantageous to go that way?
Yes, definitely. The use of the tool in the past years has always been a guidance tool to determine what to go fix, what to go patch. I have no doubt you realize that today. So one of the things that we're trying to do now is part of our key risk indicator is to not only, we still look at the whole platform or all of the vulnerabilities that need to be fixed within the right severity levels, but we are now using the IOC and also the threat protect to prioritize so that instead of taking the regular patch cycle, the regular methodology, we tackle those on a faster cadence. So it really is, we're using that for our prioritization. It works much better in the smaller organizations where you have the one person who can make that decision of prioritization versus in the large organizations where this is the bundle I have to build to go patch everything. So again, it just depends on the flexibility of the staff.
Right.
Your tool is all about who the users are, and today you've customized it for the use by all staff. So in other words, the people that do the bundles for the big tools like Fix, okay, all the way down to the onesie twosies, just so that they know in their small organization, if they wish to reduce risk, they can do this.
Absolutely, you need that approach that cannot be a one size fits all, and so all of these integrations are quite important. And we at the end, it's all about prioritization to have an accurate response, right? Is to how do we weed out from a lot of noise? How do we have a platform that can really bring a lot of different types of information together, correlate that, and then precisely with no false positives, tell us exactly what needs to be fixed. And so really interesting to hear your thoughts and opinion on these various aspects. And as always, thank you for being such a long time customer, and all of the feedback that you have provided over the years to make Qualys better is really valued. And I thank you again for taking the time, and hopefully I can give you some time back on your Tuesday afternoon here, and we can now go to the Q&A section. But before that, again, I want to thank George for attending via VMDR Live, and we look forward to seeing more and helping you fix your security related issues in a much better and faster way.
Thank you very much for your time.
Cool VMDR demo and very good insights from Daryl. It's now time for our live Q&A as part of VMDR Live. If you haven't already, please submit questions using the Submit a Question button on the right side of your interface. We already have 150 questions answered, submitted, and they keep coming in. So for the first question, let me take the easiest one for myself. Will the recording be available? Yes, it will certainly be available. It will be available on our website for download and streaming, and that'll be later on just after this. So we already have a few questions that came in during Philippe's opening remarks. So let me start with Philippe. Philippe, user B Mantis asked, will VMDR replace VM and all its associated module offerings?
So the VMDR is not a combination of the existing module that we have. Essentially, it's one, as you have seen on the Summit demo, it's one single application. So in that sense, it will replace, of course, a lot of the functionalities that we have with the various VM solutions like Threat Protect, etc. Now, however, we're not going to force people to upgrade to VMDR, so they could go to VMDR at their own leisure. And as Sumedh mentioned, they still are going to be able, however, even if they don't upgrade, to have some of the advantages of VMDR, namely, with the dynamic dashboards, as well as other features that come with VMDR.
Okay, and there's actually a follow-on question about that. With the traditional Qualys IP-based pricing, how does VMDR asset-based pricing differ, and how can that be used?
So on one hand, as everybody knows, I mean, all of our users, it's extremely easy to deploy, Qualys at scales. We have customers who scans millions of IPs every day. Now, VMDR brings that ease, if you prefer, of deployment to the ease of procurement. Because now, instead of having to count the numbers of scanners, the number of agents, etc., all of that is included. So we essentially price on a per asset basis, for VMDR. So you have all the functionalities of VMDR, as Sumedh very, very well demonstrated, on a per asset basis. So it simplifies significantly the procurement process.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. In fact, a lot of questions on VMDR itself and some of the individual capabilities. So we'll go do some questions for Sumedh. There are a number of questions around asset inventory capabilities that you demoed in VMDR. One from Luke asked, does the asset discovery and inventory identify external facing assets? And he had a second question, do the capabilities of end of life and end of support for hardware and operating systems, and I'll add also applications, how do those get factored in, since, as we know, unpatched applications can be at higher risk?
Yeah, so great question. As Philippe mentioned, right, VMDR is not just a combination of couple different scanners or agents. It's really bringing a lot of the data from the different sensors together and correlating it in the backend. So as you saw in the demo, there is a clear way to basically identify external facing devices today using our scanners. We do that extremely well because we have a cloud-based platform. We can essentially have the ability to scan the entire internet. And we can identify the external assets. We're also working on some integrations to bring additional feeds into that. And then that asset inventory basically gives you the visibility from an internal asset perspective as well. It's not just enough to have like just a hardware-based asset inventory. The software asset inventory that the agent brings, we do a lot of enrichment around that. We do categorization, normalization, so we can tag things automatically. What is a database? What is a web server, as you saw in the demo? So all of those capabilities are already included as part of VMDR. There are some additional optional enhancements like ability to know end of life or ability to be able to enrich that based on publisher information and things like that, which not all customers always use that. So in those cases, you can always add that as an additional ability on top of VMDR. It's already bundled in and built in terms of the product itself, and it can be activated pretty easily. And you can definitely do a trial of that as well.
Okay. And I think one of the most powerful things about VMDR and really the Qualys platform is how the VMDR prioritizations integrates patch detection and patch deployment capabilities into a single interface. And there's a lot of questions around patch management. So let me get to a couple of them. Shawnetta asked, if an organization does not have the Qualys patch management module enabled, will the VMDR dashboard still show if a patch is available to the user?
Absolutely. So that's the great part about that unified interface, which is the ability to go from detection of a device all the way to detection of patches as included as part of VMDR. What that means is that you to be able to detect the specific patch on the specific device, you need to be able to use the agent so we can tie exactly which file needs to be deployed for fixing the specific vulnerability. And even if the patch deployment capability is not enabled from Qualys, the detection capability is included as part of VMDR. So all VMDR agents will automatically be upgraded to be able to have the ability to detect the exact patches, and that's included as part of VMDR. And then from there on, organization can decide whether they want to leverage that information for using with third-party patching systems, or make it even easier by leveraging Qualys agent itself to deploy those patches directly and reduce the amount of time it takes to patch.
Okay, good. I think you already asked the next question coming up. I have Qualys, but another team does the patching in my organization. How can VMDR help them?
Yeah, so that's the nice part about the platform, that it's all included as part of the wider platform in terms of the integration, in terms of the modules, in terms of the database in the back. So it's a very integrated experience. It's a very seamless experience with nice workflows. However, being born in the cloud from day one, we've always had very strong role-based access control capabilities and user scoping capabilities. So even if it's a different team in the organization that is the one that's doing the specific patching, they can be very easily given specific access and specific permissions to just look at the patching part and have an approval workflow in there. And so you can have that separation of duty between the vulnerability team and the patching team, so that two different teams can be on the same platform looking at the same data, but through different views and through specific tailored workflows for that individual user as well.
Okay, and I think another question that Mario asked was, customers are concerned about potential issues when patching production servers. How can a customer predict the potential issues? How can Qualys help?
Yeah, so we have a very highly feature capable patch deployment capability, right? That module is very mature. It has everything from ability to do scheduling, rollback of patches, lots of different capabilities already built in. And because everything we do on the platform has that homogeneity of the cohesion of being tied around asset and asset tags, what we see is that a lot of customers who have automated testing, automated test beds created, they can simply enable a one particular tag on test systems to get the patch first. And once they are satisfied that the patch on the test systems is not causing any issues, then the patch can roll on to rest of the actual production tags. So that makes it extremely easy to first ensure that you go through the change control and ensure that the patches being deployed are something that will not impact the assets negatively. Now, you can also do that based on the type of asset. So in many cases, for example, laptops, you probably always want to auto patch your Adobe and a few of the operating system type of patches, so don't have to go through a lot of testing and verification. But as the capability matures, we should also be able to provide information on which patches might be failing or causing issues. So there's many more additional integrations we will be doing that will also bring in that specific information to make it easy to do the patching through automated workflows.
Okay, and actually that process you talked about during your keynote at Qualys Security Conference earlier this year on how people can integrate patching with DevOps and CI/CD. Okay, maybe, so overall there's a question for Philippe. I think there's a question that someone really asked overall. And Scott asked, how do you differentiate what Qualys is doing with VMDR from what Tenable and Rapid7 has?
So I would say, generally speaking, if you look at the security industry as a whole, Qualys took a very different approach. Most companies essentially pushed because of the need to find funding or the need to go public. They went to, their strategy was a strategy to grow as fast as they could. Our approach was very different, as you saw in the presentation of Sumed. We realized that at the end of the day, what needed to be done is to build a real platform and a real cloud-based platform. So, of course, when you build a platform, you cannot essentially accelerate as easily your growth than what some other companies have done, which is to acquire other companies. And then, of course, then you get the growth. But then you have to stitch all these different applications together, which is a huge challenge, especially when you think about the cloud, as far as the cloud architecture. So to answer the question more directly, what differentiates us specifically then from the Rapid7 and the Tenable and others is that they took the approach of essentially trying to move as fast as they could to get growth. And of course, today, instead of having the very coherent platform that Qualys has built over time, which was a huge undertaking, they have essentially application more or less stitches well or not so well together. And that's the fundamental difference. And because of that approach, as I mentioned in the introduction, now we can now continue to expand very easily into other markets, such as the EDR market and other markets that we just mentioned, like the incident response market and other application out of the same platform, where everything is centrally managed and self-updating. So in a way, the value proposition of Qualys today, which is very unique, is that on one hand, we can help our customers consolidate their stack of existing enterprise security solutions, which they have piled them, that like there is no tomorrow. And then on the other hand, also allowing them to, in that case, reduce the costs, increase their visibility, and then also help them secure their digital transformation, which is what we're doing, with Microsoft, where now our agents are embedded, etc. So we have an architecture that really, really scales.
So thank you for that. And actually, that really enforces what you've been saying for years, that the architecture really is the power behind the Qualys platform. Drilling down back into...
I call it the architecture stupid.
Okay. All right, very good. Drilling down into some of the more technical questions, a few questions around Cloud Agent. So B. Santi asks, we are currently using the Qualys Cloud Agent for VM on our cloud VMs and premise virtual machines. Is VMDR different than what we have now and what we're using today?
Yeah, so this dovetails directly into what Philippe was talking about earlier, is that it's all built part of the same platform, leveraging the same sensors, same agents that we have had, and we have sort of slapped on different acquisitions that we have done to try to stitch them together in a story. So which means that all the capabilities that are there are built into the platform, which means that we use the exact same agent. So it's not a different agent. So if you already have Cloud Agent, so just and just so we're level set on this conversation, there is only really one agent from Qualys, whether you use it on the laptops, whether you use it in the cloud, AWS, Azure, or whether you use it on your on-prem servers or wherever it is. It's really the same code base, extremely lightweight, small agent, which does the data collection and sends it back to the platform. So which means that all this additional capability that we have is built directly into that same agent. You don't need to install another agent, or you don't need to go and manually upgrade the agent. Once accounts are being turned over to VMDR, the required capability on the backend and the agents is being automatically and completely seamlessly upgraded. So it's not a different agent, and you don't really have to do anything extra to be able to use the agent for prioritization, patch detection, or patch deployment.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. There really is only one agent here at Qualys. Ted, though, had a similar question on the agents. Does VMDR require the deployment of the Cloud Agent, the Qualys agent?
So I think VMDR does not require that the Cloud Agent be deployed. I think we can provide some good ability to look at the threats and prioritize based on scans and authenticated scans even better. But today, given the dynamic nature of the assets and how quickly assets are changing and how quickly vulnerabilities are changing, a lot of the value of VMDR really comes from having more real-time information coming from the agents, as Daryl mentioned earlier as well, that it's really nice to have just things being updated automatically and being tracked. And so while VMDR doesn't necessarily require the agent be deployed, you get a lot more value out of the entire VMDR workflow, because we can get very precise and detailed and up-to-date information from those devices, automatically correlate that and highlight what's needed. Now, of course, if you want to take a response action or want to know the exact patch that is missing on that particular device, then you need the agent. If you want detailed asset inventory, you need the agent. So the agent definitely brings a lot more high fidelity and ability for us to correlate much better when you have that agent down there.
Okay, so changing topics here, and this really shows the creativity of the Qualys customer. Shannon was able to ask 3 questions in a single submission. So I will go ahead and try to ask all 3 at one time here. Are you going to cover cloud environments after IoT? Is VMDR FedRAMP certified? And can you cover the API options? So really got 3 into 1. So that's for you, Sumedh.
All right. So I think the first one is free, and then the other ones I think we charge for, right? So okay, let me see if I can remember all of them. I'll start from the end. So APIs. So APIs are the same APIs we've always provided from a asset perspective. So we, as you enable VMDR, a lot more high fidelity telemetry information will be coming out from the APIs. We have a couple additional new APIs related to patching. So those will provide some additional information if you want to integrate that with other patch management solutions or with some other ability to basically approve patches and things like that. And then there is, of course, the base level of the API usage tier is already included in VMDR. If you want to have a lot more high parallelism on the APIs or things like that, then that will be something that would have to be discussed with the account manager to see how we can help there. In terms of FedRAMP, yes. So essentially, we are FedRAMP certified. We eat our own dog food all the time. And we use our own solutions to stay FedRAMP certified. And so we do everything that we do on the platform is part of that same FedRAMP certified platform. So yes, VMDR is FedRAMP certified. And then in terms of the agents expanding, so it's the same agent running in, whether it's cloud, whether it is on mobile devices. So one of the things with VMDR is we're including an agent that is for Android, iOS devices. So those kind of agents can be put on your tablets that are on your meeting rooms. They can be put on Android TVs. They can be put on different type of devices as well. So we start to cover, and you'll see more of that coming from us in terms of IoT coverage as well. But again, everything that we do will be in the cohesion of the VMDR, and the VMDR concept is the ability to discover all the devices, look at their inventory, whether they are a cloud, IoT, and on-premise, remote endpoint, whatever it is, bring all of those together, correlate them, detect the vulnerabilities, again, using different sensors, whether it's agent scanner or passive scanner, do the prioritization by taking threat feeds that our research team is working on, plus from partners, and then providing the ability to remediate and taking response. And that's why you saw in my slides, I talked about additional response capabilities are also coming from that perspective as well. So I don't know, Philippe, if you wanted to add anything to the agent.
No, I think, and also you didn't mention the configurations. It's just not just the vulnerabilities, it's as well as the configuration. We're also looking, as you know, I try to find out if vulnerabilities are reachable, et cetera, et cetera. So we're continuing, expanding significantly, our view of that landscape, which is very hybrid, as we very well know. And I don't know of any solution today in the marketplace who can really cut across all that hybrid environment as well as we do.
Okay.
In fact, let me follow up, Philippe, to your statement, since there's a lot of questions on asset inventory at Qualys, and a lot of questions on, why is all the inventory discovery included as part of VMDR? It seems like it's an IT use case, and Qualys is security. A lot of questions on, why is Qualys giving all this capabilities around IT asset discovery to their customers?
That's an interesting question. If we go back to the early days of Qualys, what we realized very early on is that the fundamental challenge of vulnerability management were, one, you needed to be capable of identifying what you had. And we're doing that in a very crude and primitive way through the scanning. And then our customers had to go to IT to say, is that really a device? What do you see here? And there was a lot of confusion. So that's one of the problems of vulnerability management. The second problem was, which Qualys have solved very well, which was the problem of essentially the false positive. So you don't want to go and tell that there is a vulnerabilities when there is none, and even worse, when you don't see a vulnerability. What is interesting is that, and that's what essentially, if you look at security, that has been always a problem of security, the false positive, the false negative. This is why that industry was so fragmented. What we always believe, and now we're proven right, is that if you could bring all the necessary data in one place, then, and where you could have enough computing power and you could bring and you could enrich the data, etc., you could build an entire suite, fundamentally, of best-of-breed solution, which you could not really do as an enterprise with an enterprise architecture. So I think we have also solved the problem of the false positive, and in our forthcoming EDR solution and incident response solution, one of our goals, obviously, is to have significantly less false positive or false alerts, if you prefer, that these current systems are generating. And the third solution was that's not good enough to know where are your vulnerabilities. You need to prioritize them, which is also not a walk in the park. And finally, you have to essentially remediate, patch this solution or mitigate. And that's why it took us so long. But we knew this problem since the very, very beginning. This was our challenge. And we realized that it's only with the cloud architecture and essentially throwing significantly more computing power, having more and more connectors so we could capture the data or sensors, that we could really realize that. So that's what I mentioned in my opening remarks, is that VMDR that's been a long time in the making. There's been a huge engineering effort.
So maybe staying on you, Philippe, how would you give advice to the people who are asking questions about agent? Because some of our first customers that deployed the cloud agent, they got now a huge deluge of new vulnerabilities on assets that they could never scan before. And with the free remote endpoint protection, now they're looking at and managing systems that are not even on the network. So what type of advice would you give to customers as they move to Qualys and move to VMDR in terms of now all this new vulnerability data?
This is an interesting question because it's exactly the opposite. The problem of scanning today, even if you have authenticated scan, it's really painful. If you don't have authenticated scans, your scans are not really precise. If you do have authenticated scans, they are more precise, but then you need to fetch the credential, then you need to have the scanning windows, then you don't have the real time. The beauty of VMDR, which is essentially is the backend plus all these connectors, is that all of that information comes at you continuously, but is the platform does the work. So we absolutely manage the 3 trillion data point index on our Elasticsearch servers, as I mentioned earlier, 5 billion messages a day on our Kafka bus. So all these 140 engines are really working in the background to try to sift through that data. And as you have seen in the demonstration of Sumed, making like essentially click, click, click. If you look, for example, at what we have done also with Microsoft, with Azure, today, if you want to have the view of your inventory or your assets on Azure, you have an embedded coalition that does that for you. And then if you want to see the security and compliance postures of those assets, that same agent does that for you. And now if you want to remediate, you use the Microsoft playbooks, and now you remediate. In this environment, security has become essentially click, click, click. Nothing to install, nothing to update. The only thing you've got to do is bring your policy. And that's the power of the cloud platform that we have built.
Yes, and in fact, we actually saw that very well in the demo that Sumed did. I think we have maybe 2 last questions for time. Compliance checks. Sumed, there's a question for you on when will we add or do we have compliance checks in VMDR?
Yeah, so I think we have to separate compliance and configuration assessment, right? So I think there is a huge value of looking at configurations and misconfigurations on devices as part of your overall vulnerability posture and ensuring that it's just a device. If it's completely patched for software, it doesn't mean that it's secure. You can have bad misconfigurations that can lead to a compromise. So that's the reason why we have included the misconfiguration detection as part of VMDR. So you can check for configurations and see how they do against CIS benchmark, which is a well-known benchmark, and be able to remediate those. Of course, if there are more custom policies or mandates that need to be looked at, then the policy compliance solution from Qualys can be enabled so that you can actually get more things like FedRAMP and CIS. In addition to CIS, you can get FedRAMP, PCI, and other benchmarks, or FedRAMP, in fact, is a big one that we can satisfy as well. So yes, configuration checks are included as part of VMDR, and then the compliance can be something that can be added on.
Yeah, and I will add one thing that Sumed, to what Sumed said, is that the beauty of our platform is because we bring essentially IT, security, and compliance data. In fact, it's the same, fundamentally, data. Now, there are different views and different use cases, but by bringing all that data into one place, then we can have to provide the view of IT, the view of security, and the view of compliance into one single platform. So you realize how much simplicity and how much cost we can eliminate today out of the current solutions, which all are very different and extremely difficult to integrate.
Okay, we are coming to the end of our live Q&A as part of VMDR Live, and there's only time for one more question, and this is for Sumed. Where can I read about VMDR?
I don't recommend reading about VMDR. I think the easiest thing is to try it. So you can go to if you're an existing customer, it's being enabled on your account. And so the best way is to just try it, because all the data you already have, you're going to see very quickly how we have prioritized that information. And if you are interested in finding out more about VMDR, I would say go to our website, sign up, and just download a few agents. And it's so easy so easy to use. I think that's the best way to do it, because the reading is will take a long time and won't really give you the information needed anyway. So.
And we have also technical people on the lines, through our chatbot, who can really help you automatically. So it's not only it's very easy to deploy, to use, but then also you have at your fingertip, you have all the help you need to fundamentally look for yourself. And that's the best solution. That's the best thing that we can say.
Yeah, because there is all these, we have over 200 questions that have come in, and we're able to answer only like 10 or so right now in the given time. And so all these questions will be answered if you can, go and we'll of course respond to the questions, and we will put all of this live as recording, as Chris said. But yeah, I think the best way is to just give it a try.
Okay.
Right, in closing, thank you again for attending VMDR Live. The recording will be available soon. And do try VMDR, and please try to stay safe.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, it is important to protect yourself and others from spreading the virus. Prevention and personal safety is key. Here are the top ways you can protect yourself and others. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Avoid touching your face. Practice social distancing and avoid high-risk potential people. If you are showing symptoms, stay at home. If you must go out, wear a face mask. Always cover coughs and sneezes with a tissue, or use the inside of your elbow. Clean and sanitize frequently touched surfaces daily. Together, we can prevent this pandemic.
Okay, hope you enjoyed the Qualys VMDR video. Many thanks to Qualys for making the entirety of that available to us. It'll be available on demand as well, so you can check that out. Quickly, I wanted to hit some news headlines for today to send you off for the weekend, and then we'll get on with the rest of our show. So on the news, as usual, just a spattering of what we have out on our sites. On Security Boulevard, we have before 5G or AI, business security foundations must be stronger. And that makes sense, right? Let's do it right this time. Let's not add the security after the fact. So we need to have our business security foundations laid down, and then we can build secure 5G, secure AI on top of that. It's a great article. I highly recommend it. Over on Container Journal, two things. Red Hat embeds container tools in Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which, is a no-brainer, obviously, but let's see what they've got in there. And then also, the folks over at Software AG have launched App Mesh, which, Mesh is the rage, and you can see what Software AG is doing on it. On DevOps.com, we have a couple articles to bring out to you. How to get your digital data game on with data ops. Data ops is increasingly becoming an important piece of the DevOps puzzle. Of course, the data ops people tell you it's bigger and separate than DevOps, but whatever. Just don't call us late for dinner, right? But understand about data ops. It's something I think you want to understand and have a handle on. Another good article is how SDM's holistic approach connects organizations, streamlining delivery processes. And so this is around software delivery management, which sits on top of, it's a CloudBees term actually, came up with it. But it's really, the way I look at it is if the software delivery pipeline is the factory floor, that assembly line, that's called SDA. The SDM is up at the executive offices on how do you manage that plan for it and make it all work together. So it's a good dive on SDM. Check that out. And that's it for the news today. As I said, there's plenty more out on the sites, though. Please do check them out. Check out the next installment of Bob Resselman's The Adventures of Microservice. The decoupling is out. I think it's episode 3 or 4 on Security Boulevard. Check that out as well. And now let's head over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor, for her interview for today, Friday, April 24th. And Charlene, take it away.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, thanks, Alan. This is Charlene O'Hanlon here at TechStrong TV. I'm managing editor at Media Ops. And, one of the things that we're hearing so much about these days is the COVID-19 pandemic that's not only wreaking havoc on people's health, but also the health of the economy. It's become clear that everyone is being affected by this pandemic in one way or another. And even in areas where, jobs were considered recession-proof or safe, quote unquote, layoffs are happening and people are really, really feeling the impact everywhere. So I've got Clockwise CEO Matt Martin with me, about to do an interview, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that developers and engineers can do to kind of recession-proof their jobs, their careers, despite the economy being what it is. So Matt, thank you so much for taking a few minutes and talking with me today.
Of course, this is an incredibly important topic right now, and I'm sure it's on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's start off first though by you tell me a little bit about your company. I'm not very familiar with Clockwise.
Of course. So Clockwise is a company that creates an intelligent calendar assistant that helps you defragment your day, defragment your schedule so that you can make more time for focused work. So we work a lot with the developer community, with software engineers, with designers, with product managers and software companies to connect to calendars, move those meetings around a little bit to open up that meaty time, that maker time, so that you can go heads down and get your work done without interruption.
That's great. That's great. So, so you guys know all about productivity then, for sure then.
We do. We think very, very deeply about it, yes. And we see the trends unfurl across the industry right now in real time. We have a lot of usage, a lot of users, and therefore a lot of calendar data where we observe kind of what's happening with this switch to remote work.
I imagine there's some really interesting statistics there.
There are. It turns out we're spending a lot more time in Zoom calls, and there's not as much out of office and vacation time. So trends that you might imagine.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. Well, let's talk a little bit about the subject at hand, basically, which is how engineers and developers can recession-proof their careers. And I came across this statistic that really scares me. It's the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. They actually projected that the global economy is going to contract 3% this year. And they had originally said that it was going to expand 3.3%. So that's huge. I mean, and they're saying that it's going to be the worst contraction since, or the worst downturn, I guess, since the Great Depression. So, that's frightening in and of itself. And then when you think about, just the way organizations are kind of changing their business models to accommodate this new way of working, and we're seeing more people working from home even after the pandemic ends. It's kind of expected that, the work from home and working remotely will be kind of the new thing, and nobody really has any idea how that's going to impact the workplace in general. So, obviously folks are really, really going to be hit hard by everything that's going on. So what is it that people in IT and specifically developers and engineers, what are some of the things that they can do to kind of improve their collective outlook?
Absolutely. So first, at a very top level, I just want to hit on the fact that absent this, and it is a very scary environment, those numbers scare me as well, and I think we all need to be open-eyed and rational about that. But we head into this with some wind at our backs in the IT profession, given that this has been a market that has been expanding dramatically, as we all know. Heading into this year, 70% of IT managers thought they were going to expand their workforce in 2020. Now, that's not going to end up being the case, but we are better situated than a lot of industries at a base level. Now, that said, I also want to just hit, Charlene, just as some high-level basic practices before diving into IT specific. We're all susceptible to this downturn, and I'm not a personal finance expert, nor will I pretend to be one, but I highly advise people to go out and look at resources on places like nerdwallet.com or other financial tips, because at a basic kind of financial hygiene level, you do want to, if possible, build up a larger cash reserve than you might normally have. You do want to try to keep your job that you have, even if you're looking, keep keep the job that you have and look while you're employed, and also to dive into some of the resources that are available if you are unemployed to make sure you're taking care of those as well, just at a base level.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so moving into the IT industry, just some key tips just at the top level. So some of these are no-brainers, but I just want to cover them. So you want to invest in your network right now. We are all work remote. I think we're mostly, probably your audience is very familiar with the stats around how many new jobs come from referrals and how many successful placements come from your network. And so you want to take some time, if you haven't done so recently, just to comb through your network, maybe go on LinkedIn, maybe go through your email and identify some people that you want to catch up with, even if you're employed currently. If you're not employed and you are actively hunting, this is also going to be the best way that you're going to find prospects, but also inform yourself about the job opportunities that are out there. Hop on some more Zoom calls, have a Zoom happy hour, whatever it takes. It should be fun, hopefully, but that's a first level of advice. The second level is, investing in your skill set. So this is less about taking up a new field, unless you're really junior. I mean, you may hear some buzz around, AR, VR jobs are up, but who knows how these different industries are going to be hit over the course of a recession. I think it's too difficult to predict what buzzy areas are going to have higher job retention and employment opportunities. And to the extent that you're a seasoned IT professional, definitely stick with what you know, but look at how you're going to expand that and deepen it. And Charlene, I think good news for your audience is that to the extent that you are in the dev stack, that you are in the build stack, this is a really good place to be right now, because for the entire audience of software engineers, what you're trying to create is making yourself essential. If your company is looking at cutting the workforce, and I hope it doesn't come to this, but it is at a lot of places right now. If they're cutting the workforce by a certain percentage, you want to make sure that you're one of those essential employees that's really vital to the operations. And a good way to do that, regardless of whether you're already there, is to get closer and closer to that essential layer of dev productivity, the build stack. And I can talk a little bit more about that, Charlene, if that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything that you might also have a point of view on or statistics on regarding training and certification related to any of that that'd be great too.
Absolutely. So at a couple layers, I think, this splits a little bit now depending on the particular area that you operate inside of the software engineering ecosystem. I'm a front-end engineer, so this is the area that I'm most comfortable speaking of. But I do have stats on a variety of other areas. But let's just start with front-end engineering. The patterns here are very predictable. You can go look at the top skills at any reports. CVCompiler.com has a great one out right now that's pretty fresh. JavaScript, CSS, those are obviously basics. But if you're not already familiar with things like React or Angular, these are very good times to invest in building up that skill set. And there are a variety of resources online to help you do that. But I would also push people to go, in a step even further, which is maybe pick up TypeScript if you haven't thought of picking up TypeScript. Maybe get into GraphQL, or again, getting yourself closer to that build stack, pick up Webpack or the compiler level, where you can actually help the whole developer team at your company be faster. For backend developers, I'm using that pretty broadly. One of the top skills right now that's reported, and this is a very large label, but is AWS. Understanding that level of cloud compute and also cloud storage, whether it's AWS, Azure shows up, Google Cloud, understanding how to facilitate that. Also understanding, again, for this audience, very relevant, the build layer, Kubernetes, a few other technologies that come up frequently, Jenkins, Docker, Ansible, getting yourself into that build stack where you're really going to be essential. And then if you look at this overall, the other thing that you should be cognizant of is that while these are some of the skill sets that you want to develop if you can and get them onto your profile, there's always the old and steady always in demand languages and skill sets around C++, JavaScript, Java, SQL, Python. These are valuable skill sets, and what you want to do there is just push to deepen yourself, push to make sure that you're understanding those languages that are your primary languages at a high level of proficiency, so that if you go into a job environment interview, or if you're facing a downsizing at your company, that you can speak with confidence about how you are an expert in those areas.
So it sounds like, kind of maybe less specialization, becoming more of a, I don't want to say jack of all trades, but really kind of expanding that the breadth of knowledge that you have in those languages would be helpful. What about Cobol? Because I'm hearing a lot about Cobol lately.
The Cobol stuff is really interesting because you have Cobol engineers who are in demand because of legacy systems, and Cobol's not a language that very many modern developers are familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, Charlene, I'm talking down a turn right here because I don't have data in front of me, but I'm skeptical if that's a broad trend.
Mm-hmm.
I think certainly if you want to go very, very highly specific with your job hunt and you're seeing some of those Cobol jobs available, and you do have some knowledge of Cobol as a language, and you would have an advantage where you could go brush up on it and bring yourself up to speed. There aren't a lot of engineers in the community right now that have any familiarity with Cobol.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be advantageous, but I just don't know, is that a broad trend, or is that just a series of articles we're seeing right now because for developers like myself, it's an interesting phenomenon?
I think it's a short-term spike myself. I think that, organizations that are running the mainframes had such a spike of use, and they just couldn't handle it. So I think it's short-term, but that said, who's to say that that's not going to happen again sometime soon? So maybe not have Cobol your main area of focus, but it's definitely something to keep in your back pocket, I think.
I think that's right, and I think that's true. I think that's true of any niche. So if you do have, there's kind of a split here, if you will, Charlene, where you do want to develop kind of that broad basis of core knowledge, because if you're going out on the general market, you're just going to have more jobs that are available too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be a more crowded market, and it's going to be a longer job hunt that you have to prepare yourself to, because there's going to be more competition, and employers are largely going to have selection. And also, I think all employers are going to raise the bar a little bit on their hiring process. So if you do have, on top of that core skill set, a niche skill set that can really make you highly attractive to a specific job opportunity, that's a great area to target, and that's a great area to augment.
What about those soft skills, like engineers being able to, write sentences and things like that? And I hate to say that it's a very broad stroke that I'm painting there, but engineers are not normally known for their writing skills. So just anything it's business related. What are some of the skills, those softer skills that would be helpful for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Clockwise, for example, we pay a lot of attention to the softer skills. We're looking for well-rounded software engineers that, again, have that depth and that expertise, but are going to be a valuable member of the team and going to be highly productive across a wide variety of skill sets. And that often does mean interaction with product managers, interaction with design, interaction certainly with other engineers. And so what employers are going to be looking for is and this may sound facile, but just a good human being, just somebody that you want to be in the room with.
Yeah, just
but I think
jerk, right?
That's right. And so I think a few tactical tips there are, first and foremost, always keep in mind that you will be evaluated on those lines. So it's not just about coming in and to a whiteboarding exercise or a coding challenge, or it's an interview and knocking out the technical side of it. You're always going to be evaluated on those soft skills, and you really have to pay attention to those throughout the process. And then the second tactical is going back all the way back to LinkedIn. Now's a good time to request from people some recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. And some of them, I would advise that you really think about who you want those recommendations to be, because people might source them as referrals. So don't just make them a quote that looks nice on a page. Really make sure that you have that relationship. That's an opportunity to get some feedback on where your strengths are and your weaknesses are on these soft skills. Use that as an excuse with the recommender to have a conversation about what they think your strengths are, and you can lean into those. And then lastly, if you're looking for something just tactical to do, I think there is a huge value to engineers who can work with product managers, and in a tough situation where we are seeing downsize, maybe even take on some of the lightweight coordination duties his or herself, being a tech lead, being a manager, being a mentor. And so brushing up on best practices in, sorry, my dog just grabbed a toy. Excuse me while I yank this from him.
All right.
The joys of working from home, right?
Exactly.
But I really love Marty Kagan's book, Inspired. It's a little bit thicker. It's not too thick, but you could just skim it in a day or over a weekend, and you'd have some really good talking points to think through in terms of some of those soft skills that you might bring to the process.
Okay. All right, great. What about, just plain old stepping up and filling the requirements, not just the requirements of the job, but maybe kind of taking it a step beyond and actually volunteering for extra work, extra tasks, those things that kind of get you noticed in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, as I started with, the best job to find is right now is the one that you already have.
Yeah.
So bolstering that skill set, and this will all pay dividends over time, right? I mean, in this environment, if you can prove your mettle, it will certainly position you well to get a promotion or a promotion in the future, and possibly build out skills that are going to be valuable on the job market. And so I think, to your point, Charlene, there is a lot to that. And I think the place that I would start personally is so that you don't waste cycles. It's really easy to dive in a project that you find interesting. It's easy to dive in a project that you think may be valuable, but check that. Go have the conversation with your manager. What can I do to best serve the organization right now? I know it's a tough time for everyone. How can I really help? Or have that conversation even with your manager's manager, with your team or your tech lead. And really, I think people are going to value that person who's stepping up in a way that's conscious of everybody else's needs.
Good advice. Good advice. So, I've often heard the term fortune favors the bold. And so I'm wondering if that applies now. I mean, would it be a good time to be bold with your career?
I think the most prudent thing to do is actually to be conservative. And I don't think that's the antithesis of bold. You can be conservative and bold at the same time. But I think you need that solid foundation to be able to be bold. And to make some sense of that, if you have a job, it's not the time to jump out and find something new. But what you can do is use your time tactically within that job to spin up some of these networking opportunities, to spin up some of the kind of due diligence on your own profile, to dive into some other areas of work, and to play the job market. That's not necessarily a bad thing to do. There are still places that are looking to strategically take hold of the moment and hire with velocity. And so there are job opportunities out there. It's not a bad idea to entertain those, but you just want to be careful about making sure you have that solid foundation. And if you're on the job market now, be wary that these cycles are going to be longer, that no job search is complete until you're in the front door, and well, not in the front door in these days, but on a Zoom call, collecting a paycheck. Right. You don't want to cut off job hunts or interview processes before you have that very solid offer where you're already, frankly, already collecting a paycheck. So being bold with a solid foundation, I guess, is how I'd frame it.
Okay. All right. Well, that's I'll go with that. Absolutely. All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for taking the time and talking with me today. It's a subject that is important, but I kind of wish we didn't have to have the discussion. But
I agree with you completely. On the plus side, there are some interesting trends going on. Remote work opens up opportunities for people that they may not have thought that they have. Everybody's remote. I think it's cracked the thought process for a lot of employers, whether they're hiring in their location geographically or across the country. So there is still opportunity out there, and our industry is a good one to be in. But I agree. I wish that we didn't have the conversation in light of the macro environment.
All right. All right. Well, thanks again for your time. I do appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much, Charlene, and all the best.
Thank you, you too. All right, stay tuned. We've got more TechStrong TV coming up, so stick around.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Okay, everyone, back here in the studio just for a moment because we're about to head over to the Analyst Corner with Mitch. It's Mitchell Ashley, CEO of Accelerated Strategies, with his Friday show.
I'm very excited to share with you some of the latest data that we've collected. We've really been focusing on the impact of the COVID virus, both in terms of technology, but also how we work. And of course, we're in the middle of maybe beginning, I don't know, we're in the journey we are of this evolution and also the economic fallout from it. But certainly, if there's anything I know, I don't know what the new normal will be, but I know it won't be normal. And I think we're building what that next thing is going to be like. If you recall some previous data that we shared with you, we had 60% of people that responded, and this was over 1,000 people that responded to this survey, said that they wanted to work from home 3 or more days per week. If I recall, it was around 45% that wanted to either were permanent or wanted to be permanent. So we're really discovering kind of what's important in health crises, economic crisis, job crisis, those kind of things when they happen, well, they're not pleasant and sometimes they can be extremely bad situation, including loss of family members or life. It makes you realize what things are important. And I think that shows up in our data this week. So we asked the question, so if you're going to work from home, why is that? What's the reason why you would prefer working at home, whether it's, full or part-time? The number one response at 75%, again, a pretty strong message, was zero commute. They get the time back, there's no traffic, there's no crowds. So if you can imagine, if you're driving maybe half an hour is not too bad, an hour, 2 hours a day, some people go a lot farther than that. That's time you get back. And while you may do calls or listen to tapes or other things while you're doing that driving and commuting on a bus or whatever it is, it's still not truly productive time. It's time you really could have used back with your family, maybe doing other work activities. So that's a huge indicator. And I think is one of the things we would look to about what is the new normal going to look like. Some of the other data from this was the second biggest reason at 54% was safety from COVID-19. Just unsure when it's time to return back into what situation and is it going to be safe for us, and not wanting to bring it back to family members or grandparents or things like that. So there's still a lot of concern, 54%, over half, cited that as one of the primary drivers for wanting to work from home. The third and fourth were really pretty close to each other: flexible schedule and fewer distractions. And the others kind of fall below that: custom work environment, more time with loved ones, comfortable clothes, things like that. So as I said, I may not know what the new normal is going to look like, but I know it won't look normal, and it won't be normal. There will be changes, because if you think about the process that we're in, while we may be in a lockdown or stay-at-home kind of situation, and different states and economies are starting to reduce some of those, there's also a lot of talk about if anything happens too quickly and we have a resurgence of the virus, they'll come back and implement those stay-at-home rules again. Discussions of in the fall about the flu and also COVID virus, a resurgence of that. And historically, there's been a pattern where those can be worse than the first round. Let's certainly hope that that's not the case. So I think we're in this work at home situation for a while, and there may be some changes here and there back and forth, but I doubt we're all rushing back to the office, or I know we aren't all at once. There certainly have to be a place that everyone's going to feel safe, and your employer's going to feel safe to bring their employees back. It'll happen in steps and starts and waves. And again, maybe a number of people will stay home. They won't be working in their office environment, at least for part of their week. So appreciate everyone who's taken the survey. I'm happy to share the results with you, some really interesting data. It's a great confirmation of why are people thinking what they are in this sort of unpredicted, uncertain situation, and thinking about how we look forward. So I wish you the best. Be safe, be well, and be careful out there.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps